That is in fact what this guy wanted to know. Is it okay if I have an extra 1,000 calories on one day and then have a 1,000 calorie deficit to next? And so the overall answer is Coach Greg, and in today's video, I was reading through some questions that subs were posting on Subreddit, and I stumbled across a great question that I thought I should give an answer to. It's very confusing. People don't know how to eat, when they should eat, how many calories, all these different things. And so in answering this question, I hope it's of benefit to you. I know if you eat in a large deficit, you will lose muscle. I was wondering if you eat in a 1,000 calorie surplus one day and the next day you eat in a 1,000 calorie deficit, will you lose muscle? And so that's a great question because everyone knows if you starve yourself, you're in too great of a calorie deficit, you're going to inevitably lose muscle. 1,000 calorie deficit a day would result in a 2-pound fat loss per week. And it may not sound like much, but trust me, if you go day after day while eating in a 1,000 calorie deficit, you most likely are going to lose muscle. But what if you're in a 1,000 calorie surplus on one day and a 1,000 calorie deficit on the next day? Will you in fact lose muscle on the day you're in a large deficit? And so in order to answer this question, you have to understand how the body works. If you eat in a 1,000 calorie surplus on any given day, your body is going to have to do something with those extra calories. What your body chooses to do is it first will fill up liver glycogen stores. Following that, your muscle glycogen stores are going to be maxed out. Now, assuming you're only in a 1,000 calorie surplus on any one given day, you are not going to store any extra body fat. You're in a 1,000 calorie surplus, you think you're going to store fat, but it's not the case. You need to continuously overeat calories in order to store body fat. And so if on the following day he goes and eats another 1,000 calorie surplus, at that point, when the muscle glycogen stores are full, the body has no choice but to store adipose tissue. The food, the extra calories that you're eating, those calories get converted to body fat and get stored under the skin or throughout the body. But he doesn't say he's continuing to eat in a 1,000 calorie surplus. He's in a 1,000 calorie surplus one day and in a deficit the next. And so what happens is on day 2, when you're in that large 1,000 calorie deficit, the body has absolutely no problem and will not lose muscle. And why? Because you have fully saturated glycogen stores. And so if you get up in the morning and you don't eat a large meal, you're fasting and so on, your body has plenty of energy from the muscle glycogen stores in order to go through your day doing chores and fueling your workout. However, if he were to continue this 1,000 calorie deficit, perhaps day 3, 4, and so on, the body eventually is going to run short on muscle glycogen. And at this point, you're starting to lack energy. You don't have the nutrients that you need. You might not get the same pump in the gym. And so you will definitely start to lose muscle. But just because you won't lose muscle eating in this way, a surplus one day, a deficit the next, does not mean it's optimal. The body still requires amino acids from protein to optimally build muscle. Remember, there are up to 5 opportunities for your body to build muscle. Every time you eat protein, muscle protein synthesis can occur. And so I would caution you on those days when you're in a 1,000 calorie deficit, even though you've eaten plenty of calories the day before and you have topped up glycogen stores, you still need to eat protein. If you don't eat protein, the body simply doesn't have the building blocks, the amino acids it needs to maximally build the muscle that you're trying to build. And so if you're trying to optimize muscle growth, it's best to be consistent with your nutrition. However, for the most part, everyone, and I do mean everyone, has days where they eat in a large surplus, followed by days they eat in a large deficit. And I'm no stranger to this. For example, if I go out to a buffet and eat a large meal on a Friday night, the next day, Saturday, I'm typically going to eat a lot less. After all, why should you continue to eat a lot of food if your muscle glycogen stores are already topped off? And so the problem is people see nutrition as something that happens on a day-to-day basis. They think of, at the end of the day, calories in, calories out, which is true, but it's not so much the end of the day. It's perhaps the end of 2 days, 3 days, a week, a year. And so rather than thinking of food as something that happens in a 24-hour period of time, and then the body resets itself or something the next day, it doesn't work like that. The body senses when it lacks nutrients and when it doesn't. And so if you eat a shit ton of calories on one day, you don't need to eat as many calories the next. Consider people who fast. Perhaps they eat all their calories in an 8-hour window, followed by a 16-hour fast. Although they're eating the same amount of calories as someone who eats 5 times a day, they're getting all their calories in a smaller block of time. And so it doesn't mean they're going to lose muscle in doing so. It's simply not optimal. If your body runs out of amino acids 15 hours after your last meal, which consume protein, it's going to have a very difficult time trying to build muscle. And so it would make more sense, if you're trying to maximize muscle growth, to then give your body the protein and amino acids that it needs. And so if you simply go by, are you in a surplus or a deficit on every given day, you're missing out on so many nuances that occur when it comes to building muscles. For example, if your maintenance calories is 2,500 calories a day, and you choose to eat all those calories from 11 p.m. till midnight, one meal a day, is that going to be as optimal as you spread out those meals? Of course not. And that's despite the fact that you are eating exactly the same amount of calories. And if you happen to go to the gym when you're completely fasted and you're starving with no energy, you're not going to optimally be able to train and recover and build muscle. And so I know we all like to think mathematically, logically. We like to think, I need this many grams of protein, 41 grams of protein 5 times a day, that we need to eat an exact 200 calorie surplus every day to optimize muscle growth, or that we should be exactly in a 500 calorie deficit every day to lose 1 pound of fat a week. In the real world, it doesn't work like that. Even if you think you're eating in a daily 500 calorie deficit, you probably are not. Some days it's going to be more, some days it's going to be less. Consider, some days you fidget more than others. Your NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is going to be higher on one day than in another. So even if you meticulously calculate eating 2,000 calories a day and your maintenance is 2,500, you don't know if you're actually in a 500 calorie deficit. But does it really matter?
It doesn't matter!
Of course not, because it balances out. If you burn more calories on one day, then the next day your body is going to send signals saying, eat a little bit more. Subconsciously, you don't even realize this. And so even if you're not tracking calories, you can still lose weight or build muscle. The key is listen to your body. If you're trying to get cut for summer, starting to shred up, and you go on a diet and suddenly you don't have energy anymore, you're in the gym, you're not getting the same pumps, you're not sleeping as well, or your sex drive is getting lower, you're not eating enough calories. You need to listen to your body and eat more. And to the same extent, if you're on a lean bulk and you're not trying to gain a lot of fat, but you're trying to put on more muscle, and so you say, I'm going to eat in a 250 calorie surplus. I'm going to slowly build muscle, but you look in the mirror and you visually see yourself getting fatter week after week. You know you're eating too much. You then eat less. Despite the fact that perhaps you track those calories to a T, you are meticulous with every morsel of food that you put in your body. You're just like Ronnie Coleman, you measure everything. You don't eat vegetables. Why would you want vegetables? AKA, Ronnie, don't eat vegetables. Everyone want to be a bodybuilder, but no one want to lift any heavy-ass weights. Well, actually, everyone want to be a bodybuilder, but no one want to eat their veggies.
I didn't really eat any vegetables when I was dieting.
And so please listen to your body. Building muscle, losing fat doesn't work on a 24-hour basis. It's day to day, minute per minute, second by second. At some point during the day, you are going to be in a deficit. Perhaps you wake up in the morning, your body's in a calorie deficit. You are burning fat. You eat breakfast, you're suddenly in a surplus. You're no longer burning fat. Perhaps you're building muscle at that point. You go to the gym, workout, you're catabolic now. The body's being torn down. Then later on you eat, you're in a surplus again, and the body can then repair, recover, and build more muscle. You go to bed, you ate before bed, you're in a surplus. You're not burning fat at this point, but by morning, perhaps you're again in a deficit. And so during any 24-hour period of time, your body is both building and losing muscle all at the same time. Also, it can be storing or burning body fat also at the same time. When I go for a 1 hour plus bike race, I'm most certainly burning a lot of fat and calories. But after that, if I eat a large meal and I'm in a surplus again, I'm no longer burning fat. So this happens every single day to all of us. And so rather than getting caught up with all the science of everything and trying to track every single detail of your life to the fullest, just live your life. Eat. Eat when you need to, when you're hungry. If you notice yourself getting fatter, eat less. If you notice yourself getting too lean or lacking energy, eat more. And so what are some of the responses to this on Reddit? You'll maintain, but you'll feel like shit. Well, yes and no. Perhaps if you eat 1,000 calorie surplus and it was all at one single meal, you might feel stuffed and bloated and feel like shit. And then in the next day, perhaps you're eating that 1,000 calorie deficit by skipping supper, you might feel hungry. And so it wouldn't make sense. One day you feel stuffed, the next you feel hungry. Would make a lot more sense to balance things out. But in the real world, many people eat 1,000 calorie surplus on one day, and they enjoyed themselves. It was a great supper. You went out with your friends, had some drinks perhaps, you ate 1,000 calories more than you should have. But that's okay because the day before, you ate 1,000 calories less. You weren't that hungry. You perhaps rode a bike race, burn off 1,000 calories, and so you were in 1,000 calorie deficit. You didn't plan it, it just happened to be that way. And so the next day you make up for it by eating more. Perfectly normal, and so you don't necessarily feel like garbage. I personally did this yesterday. I did a bike race, burnt well over 1,000 calories, and I didn't eat extra calories. And so I was clearly in a deficit yesterday. But today was more hungry for breakfast, ate more. I think the better question is why someone would want to do this. Feel bloated one day, no energy the next day. And so that is a good point. Why would somebody want to do this? I don't think that they actually want to do this. It's that it just naturally happens. Sometimes you just gather with your friends, you eat more, or perhaps you unwantedly said you'd eat one chip and you ended up eating the entire bag. And so because your muscle glycogen stores are full, you might not even feel uncomfortable. You just ate more, you perhaps gained a couple pounds of water weight, glycogen stores, no big deal. The next day, you're less hungry and you eat less. This is known as intuitive eating. That is when you know your body, you know the foods that you're taking in, and if you happen to eat too much at one meal, you can eat less the next. And so just because this question says 1,000 calories more on one day and then 1,000 calories less the next, it doesn't have to be a daily thing. It could be meal to meal. Let's say you're eating 5 meals a day. If you happen to go out for supper and eat double the calories that you're supposed to, that's fine. You simply skip the next meal or the one prior to that. If you know you're about to go to a buffet and you're eating 5 meals a day, rather than eating 5 meals, just eat 4. It's common sense, but people don't understand that this is perfectly normal. It's not a sign of disordered eating, knowing that you're going to eat more and saying, well, I'm going to eat less because of it. It's called having balance. Don't listen to the top voted comment. You will absolutely lose muscle when you're in that deficit. What you're bringing up is not an outlandish concept to folks who enjoy long distance, long duration cardio such as hiking, mountaineering, cycling. Even when you're in a calorie surplus, you will lose muscle during those pursuits. The best you can do is to surplus a surplus and keep protein high during such trips. And so apparently it's impossible to have a whole bunch of muscle if you're doing endurance sports such as cycling. Yeah, there's absolutely no way you could go for long bike rides and have muscle. I mean, absolutely. I clearly have no biceps. I lost all my muscle tissue. And so you just can't do it. And so if your goal is to have muscle, clearly don't do any cardio at all. And I'm being sarcastic here. Clearly, I do a lot of bike racing and I'm not losing all my muscle. You're deluded. Take it a bit further. How about months? Still irrelevant? Yes, net calories matter, but distribution of calories do. And so what he's saying is the distribution, how you take in your calories does in fact matter. That you can't just, for example, eat all your calories on one day and eat nothing the next and go back and forth like that. Even though you're having the same amount of calories doesn't mean you get the same results. I do believe everyone realizes this. Everyone understands this. For example, at the end of the day, calories in, calories out decides if you gain or lose body fat. But if all your calories come from carbs and you eat absolutely no protein, we all know eventually you're going to lose muscle. But for the most part, 1,000 extra calories on one day and 1,000 calorie deficit the next, that is not going to be detrimental to your physique. And so that is in fact what this guy wanted to know. Is it okay if I have an extra 1,000 calories on one day and then have a 1,000 calorie deficit the next? And so the overall answer is it's not optimal, but you're not going to lose your muscles because of it. One other caveat I should add to this, as it is going to be impacted by your body fat percentage and are you in fact on a diet? If you're 1 week out from a bodybuilding competition and you're already at 5% body fat and your glycogen levels are completely depleted, and you then have 1,000 calorie surplus one day and 1,000 calorie deficit the next, that is completely different than if you're an average person with an average amount of body fat, for example, 15 to 20%. When you're dieting shredded single-digit body fat, what you're eating is much more important. From meal to meal, if you skip a meal, you may have no energy whatsoever. If you're trying to maintain a physique that's too lean for you, for example, if I try to maintain 6% body fat and I skip a meal, I have no energy. I can't go to the gym and train because I skipped a single meal. But when I'm normal and I'm maintaining, if I skip a meal, I don't notice it because my body has plenty of glycogen stores to fuel from. And so if you notice that if you skip a single meal and it totally throws off your day, and you're single-digit body fat, well, that is the price that you have to pay for trying to maintain a physique that's too lean for your own biochemistry. And so I simply caution you, please, if you're trying to maintain a physique that's excessively lean, trying to look like a sponsored Gymshark model, then realize it comes with a price. It comes with the price of knowing that you have to be meticulous in your diet. Every single meal has to be on point. But if you're the average person going to the gym trying to build muscle, it's okay to vary things, to miss a meal, to have more calories one day, less calories the next. It is not going to make a huge or noticeable difference in your physique. Ending it here. Remember, harder than last time supplements, please click the link in the Please click the link in the description. You can go order it from there. Also, the Circle Diet book, the cookbooks, the training books, coaching plans for me and my team. The bloops are over there. Check one of those out. Catch them outside. And until next time, subscribe, comment, algorithm. I'm out.